Hey everybody, listen up. I got mega huge news. Meat Eater Live is heading back out on the road. That's right. Join me and the crew. Clay Newcomb, Cal, Yanni, Spencer's going to be there. Phil the Engineer's going to be there. Meat Eater Live, headed back out. Now, when you get every ticket, okay, every ticket you buy, you get a signed copy of our new Meat Eater Outdoor Cookbook. This tour is celebrating the release of the book. Buy a ticket, get a signed copy, Meat Eater Outdoor Cookbook, wild game recipes for the grill, smoker, camp stove, and campfire, which I'll point out is a $38 value. Here's where we're going to go. April 23rd, the Mesa Art Center in Mesa, Arizona. April 24, the Balboa Theater in San Diego. April 25, the Grove in Anaheim, California. April 27, the Crest Theater in Sacramento. April 29, the Union in Salt Lake City. April 30, the Egyptian in Boise. May 1, the Wilma Theater in Missoula. May 2, the Bing Crosby Theater in Spokane, Washington. May 4, Revolution Hall in Portland, Oregon. And May 5, the last day of the tour, Pantages Theater in Tacoma, Washington. For tickets and more information, visit the events page at themeateater.com. Hope to see you at the show.
Hey, this is Tyler Jones, and you're listening to the Element Podcast. What's happening, all my woods people? It's getting late, KC, for us early blue collar working men. We are chilling. We're not in the mouse house technically right now.
Are we technically not? That's good.
No, we're outside of the mouse house, just barely. We're in your casa, and we just ate a pretty fine dinner.
It's pretty good.
Yeah.
So I haven't told you this yet, but that's actually the 2016 elk that we ate tonight.
Okay.
So
yeah,
yeah. It was pretty good. Looked fine. I went and got my cooler to put all my elk meat in. And when I had put elk in there the first time, I layered it in black trash bags. And there was a whole nother layer underneath that I had no idea. So it's freezer aged.
Wow.
Elk meat. And it's all the good stuff.
Yeah.
It's all good. Tenderloin, all backstrap. Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah. It's kind of crazy.
Not a bad find,
But
dude.
I need to finish that off before we start on the new stuff, which is fine because we split that with my parents. So
yeah.
I only have half an elk right now.
So with what you found, you probably last like 3/4 of a year or something?
Probably. I had there's 20 pounds of meat probably from the other elk.
That's pretty cool, dude.
I know.
I'm running pretty low on deer right now.
Are you?
But I think my dad has a little bit of mine. But
Yeah.
I'm planning on slocking a few this year, so hopefully if I can get that done, I won't have to worry about asking my dad for any anyway.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Yep.
When are you going to slock your first one, man?
Well, I'm trying to do that in October.
Yeah?
Yeah.
One of us is.
One of us
Probably
is.
going to be you.
You think?
Yeah, I have a feeling.
Why?
I just think that you're due a Texas deer.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Well,
Texas
I got some
bull.
plans, but, we had a tough opening day, and we've got a similar wind every day for the next 10 days of our weather report right now. So,
and it's not a good win for either of us, at least on our permissions properties.
right. I don't know. What we're going to do is we're going to figure out how to hunt in October on this episode because we have the man, Mark Drury, today is our guest.
Actually named a giant deer after the month of October.
That's right.
So
yeah, Bucktober. One day I'm gonna name one Buckvember, and he's gonna be even bigger.
Yeah.
But until then, I'm gonna be learning from Mark about how to hunt in October, and so I'm excited to have him. But back to what's going on with us in October. We have some bucks coming in the daylight on public right now at a spot that, I think it's a majority daytime movement. And so, it's exciting, but, if you were to say, what is the worst wind you could hunt it on, it pretty much is what we have literally called for the next 10 days.
Yeah.
And so my other option here, Obviously I could go hunt other spots on public, and that may not produce at all. I mean, we don't have a whole lot going on right now. But I could go to this private permissions property that I have. Well, the worst wind that you could possibly hunt on in that property is what we have called for the next 10 days. So, I don't know what to do.
What a coincidence, because my permissions property is the same way.
Is it really?
Yeah, think about that finger of timber I hunt points directly south. What are we going to have? A south for a long, long time.
So you think those deer coming into that finger from the north?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, they're spending some time.
Because technically there's timber that runs kind of east and west, right? Or am I not seeing that right?
It's more to the east. Stuff on the west is pretty broken, and I don't think it's holding a lot of deer. There's some deer around. If we could get
So do you think that wind would skirt as they're coming into you?
If we could get a decent amount of east out of it, I think we'd be all right.
Yeah.
But
most of it's pretty south.
Yeah, that it's going to have to be a true southeast or a east-southeast to hunt it. Now, I could hunt it on a straight south and sacrifice some deer. You know what I mean? But I don't really want to do that over there. Especially since
early season, especially.
Yeah, and it's a sensitive spot because it's not like there's pretty much just, well, what's the best way to say it? It's like 10 acres of woods, right, that are in the middle of a hay pasture. So you pretty much have one stand location. I mean, you could hang your stand in a couple different trees, but it's one spot. And if you screw it up, then you're toast.
But you do have bucks.
I do have bucks. That was exciting
Yeah.
until I erased that card on accident without keeping any of it.
Dude, you actually found one of the bucks that was on your camera before you ever knew he was on your property. You found him somewhere else.
Yeah. Oh, I was thinking about this morning because I drive by this property pretty often, and I drive an area around it. I've seen that deer 3 different times on the hoof.
And the first time he was so the first time you got a really good look at him from close was the other day, right?
Yeah. So I saw him at 15 yards.
And you got pictures and stuff of him.
He ran out to 30.
Yeah.
And
that was actually closer to where I hunt.
Yeah. He's a roamer. There's a good chance that you see that deer.
Right.
In your stand.
Yeah. And
it's crazy.
But when we pulled up your card later that morning from that pool, you had him on there several times.
Oh, I can't. He was on there a lot for a little while until the corn ran out. And there wasn't any pigs this time. It's just the deer ate it all while I was gone to Colorado. But I got it back out over there now. And I went over there to set it put more out today, but I just didn't have time. I drove by. I was like, I don't really have time.
Yeah.
But
well, we had a good cold front right before the deer season started. Man. But these first few days of deer season have been pretty warm, pretty muggy. We hunted opening day, didn't have much success, and we'll talk more about that on our live Facebook event that we've got going on here in the next couple of days. It's actually on October 9th, which is next Tuesday. And we're going to do that at 8 p.m. We're going to talk about some public land hunting. What are we going to talk about?
So I figured that it would be like a...
it's a Q&A event. Yeah, so you ask me a question you want. If you want to ask why KC got orange shoes, then we'll answer it. You know what I mean? So that's fine. It can be anything.
Public bucks and bulls, kind of.
But that, we would like to talk about public land.
What we got going down right now, we're coming off of the Nameless film drop, and then coming off of me having some success in Colorado, which there'll be some footage from that coming out soon. Mm-hmm. But, if you got any questions about, and really probably the questions, of course, we're not going to be great at answering things about outfitters and stuff like that, but if you want to talk about the DIY or real dudes hunting stuff, let's talk about it, because I'm not an expert of much of anything. By trade, I am a handyman, so I'm not good at anything, or I'm not great at anything, but I'm all right at a bunch of stuff, right? So that's kind of how I feel about hunting. I can talk about it all, let's just talk about it, and we'll have fun with this thing. Yeah,
for sure. I'm excited to do it, man. It's going to be a good time, and hopefully we can find a good place where we can actually do that live event.
We're going to have some good cell phone service, which we don't always have
exactly
out here in the country. So.
Yeah. So, one thing I would mention, and you're hearing of this for one of the first times you're hearing of this. We are doing one last giveaway through 2018 here.
Ooh.
This is the last one of the year.
Last one?
Okay, so you don't get another chance to get any more gear from us before hunting season or during hunting season. And so we're doing a giveaway, and we're giving away another Exodus Trek trail camera. So
Shut up.
Yeah, and so the other one we were supposed to give away has not been claimed yet.
Oh.
So
That bro better get on it.
he better listen up and go check out that Facebook Live video that we did of the giveaway and figure out that he's the one who is the rightful owner to that thing. So he better do that quick. Anyway, this is another Exodus Trek trail camera giveaway, and we're doing this in exchange for iTunes reviews. So you go to iTunes, you give us a review, and there are a lot of you that are probably listening right now. They're like, dang, I did my review, earlier this year and I didn't win anything. Well, you, I'm sure, know somebody with an iTunes account that has not given us a review. All you got to do is go in, give us a 5-star review, tell us what you like about the podcast or whatever we do, and you can do it from anybody's profile. And when you just make sure you know your code name so that when we call it out on the podcast and say so-and-so won, you can claim the trail camera. So
last time we sent OnX subscription to South Dakota and to West Texas. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Listeners all over the place. That was neat.
Yeah.
So grab your mama's and your auntie's phones and just sign in and leave us reviews.
Hey, the more reviews you get, the better your chances are too.
You can leave like 3 or 4.
That's right. Yeah, I mean, I would do it for sure. I'd be grabbing everybody's.
I just
phone.
might.
I might do it too
because we're running those cameras and they're pretty good.
Dude, I know for a fact I've got a good buck in my neighborhood right now, and I don't have a camera out, so I need one bad. I'm like, I need a camera, but all mine are on private and public property stretched out across East Texas. So
yeah.
Anyway, but yeah, so to go do that iTunes review, do that real quick. Just pause this, give us the iTunes review, 5-star iTunes review, and then you can start it back up, and we're going to be talking to Mark Drury. Is that cool with you?
Sounds good.
All right. I also wanted to mention real quick that the audio will sound a little bit different going into this interview because this was actually done back when I was in Montana, and so KC is on the phone. So just a heads up. Let's get to the interview now. All right, so on the phone we have Mark Drury. Mark, what's been happening lately?
Well, this time of the year, it's go time for us in terms of getting the shows out, and in the spring and fall, we're out, collecting footage and filming the shows. But when you get into the summer, it's all hands on deck trying to get it put together. And, we do 3 different shows that air 3rd and 4th quarter. So starting around June 1, we ship 3 shows a week for 13 straight weeks. So
wow,
the stress level is high.
I can imagine. So what does vacation look like for you then?
Well, I am told we're going to Orange Beach this year. So,
all right.
I'm guessing that's a wife thing.
Well, it's a family thing, and I'm not a beach guy, and I don't mean that out of any disrespect for people that are, but I'm not a beach guy. But the whole family's going. There's 64 of us going, so it's going to be fun being around all my siblings, all their children, all the grands and great grands. It's going to be a fantastic time. So.
Oh yeah, man, that's a large group. I feel crazy when there's about 10 of us, so I can't even imagine.
It'll be fun though. We all enjoy each other's time and conversations and stuff, so it'll be fun. Yeah,
man, I'm with you on the beach thing. I told you earlier, I'm up here in Montana right now, and we always try. Being in Texas, I mean, it gets smoking hot down there, and this time of year, it's just like we're over it. We're ready for hunting season. And coming up here in the mountains to get a little cold weather is that's my deal. I come up here, do a little fly fishing, relax for a few days, and try to get back and sweat it out until, it's time to hunt. And that for us, that time starts on October 1st. And October typically is a slow month for us because of how much heat we have. Towards the end of the month, obviously it gets a little better. We saw a lot of movement, or we have seen a lot of movement on our trail cameras in the end of October. But is there a date or a weather event in October that kind of gives you confidence to go after a target buck?
October can be tricky, no doubt, because it oftentimes is a little bit warmer. We start getting cooler up here, usually in about the middle part of the month. But the cool thing about it, pardon the pun, when you do get a cold front, they're magical. When you're really, really hot, and then all of a sudden you get that first cold air to where it at least dips below the normal high for that range, you're going to see some movement generally. I love those first cold fronts of October. We did a whole chapter about that in our book, and we called it a cold October wind. They're magical up here in the Midwest. Mm-hmm. So that's what I look for. Our rain event, rain gets them on their feet usually.
Yeah. So Mark, how do you, I definitely subscribe to the theory that you're preaching. You know what I mean? Like I totally understand that you should hunt the fronts and that movement does happen, but I feel like there's a little bit lost on like how you actually hunt the front. I don't know if you're supposed to go in and anticipate the front hitting, be there an hour beforehand. If you should go in, when the wind's blowing hard and hunt during the actual event, or if you should wait for it to blow through and just to hunt the fallout on the back end.
Yes, and yes, in my opinion. Seriously, though, fronts are best just ahead, right during, and right after, and really just ahead and right after are better than during.
Okay.
It depends on how vigorous a front it is. If it's a light front, you're not going to see as big of a influx in movement. If it's a pretty heavy front, it could be pretty good. Depends if there's precip involved with it. They all differ, man. It's we've been blessed to watch deer for 35, 40 years now. Terry and I have combined. It's probably 70 or 80 years. And we've been blessed specifically the last 20 years to do it for 4 straight months every year. Mm-hmm. Couple that with the information off of our pictures, we're pretty analytical and we keep a lot of notes and we talk about this stuff all the time. And we feel like we've kind of cracked the code as far as when they're going to move, how well they're going to move, how poorly they're going to move, all that stuff. And it's one of the reasons we did our new app called DeerCast. So these exact questions you're asking, literally all of them are answered to the nth degree in that app. It'll be available August 28th. It's a free trial this first year, so you all download it and urge your listeners to.
Awesome.
Give us some feedback. It's pretty cool, man. It'll take the weather. It'll take 11 different weather variables plus the 13 phases. So it's looking at 24 different things at any given hour in your location, and it will tell you whether the deer should be moving or should not. And we beta tested it all last fall, and it was better than 90% accurate. It was stupidly accurate.
All right. So you said August 28th on that?
It'll be available for download. Yeah.
All right. I'm putting that in my calendar because that sounds pretty awesome.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
Not only that, like if there's a front coming and the app comes up with a great, there's 4 categories. There's poor, there's okay, there's good, there's great. All right. If it comes up with a great, then or whatever it comes up with, you can then scroll down from that prediction and go into 7 to 10 different videos that'll tell you why we think it's going to be great that day. So it's a tremendous teaching tool. So if the app's identifying a certain weather event, then you can go through those videos and hear our thoughts on why that event is a suppressor or an enhancer. So it's just pretty awesome.
Wow.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. So I'm going to ask you a different question and then kind of combine the two. So around here, it just seems that the evenings can be so blistering hot in October that it's just almost just unbearable to hunt. And I know that's kind of against the common thought pattern, right? Like early season, you leave the mornings alone and hunt the evenings. So in your opinion, is it true where evenings are when you should be hunting in October?
In my experience, yes, unless it's the first day that the wind blows out of the north. Do not miss that morning. It is literally incredible. The first cold morning or the first day of the front of a morning, they all move. Like it's stupid how well they move. And again, the app will pick up on that trait.
Yeah, very cool. Okay, so then you kind of answered how I was going to combine them. I was wondering when the fronts override that idea of just evening. So it's pretty much the first good front. Don't worry about mornings or evening. Hunt it when you can.
Hunt it when you can. Mornings get quite good. The first morning it's blowing out of the north, particularly if the front passes through the night.
Mm-hmm.
That morning is going to be quite good.
Awesome. Yeah, we've seen that kind of on our trail cameras as well, where it's something to do with, especially when there's a windy front, it seems that there's new vegetation that gets knocked down, or some of those earliest acorns will fall, and the bucks will really be up on the feed, right after those big fronts like that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Sure.
So, is it ever too hot to be in a stand in October?
Yes.
Yes.
I always look at the average high for that area.
Mm-hmm.
When those temperatures start to approach 10, 15, 20 degrees above average, if there's not some front that's going to influence movement, I find that extreme heat in that range is a suppressor.
Okay. Gotcha.
And again, like our app will catch that, and it'll also tell you the average high for the day, and then you can look at it and watch it. It's one of the biggest indicators of deer movement.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Well, if we ever get 10 to 15 degrees higher than our October high, I would be very scared, because I'm pretty sure our October averages, especially early October, are going to be low to mid 90s still. So if we're hitting that 105 mark in October, it's a really rough year.
Yeah,
for us.
that kind of heat. They just don't move that well. They might move a little bit, but you better be close to his bed, like 50 yards from his bed.
Right.
Yeah. No kidding. Or maybe it's just time to go somewhere up like where Tyler's at, right, Tyler?
Yeah, that's right. So are you looking at these deer that are moving in October on the cold front? Are they moving? Are they still? They're still very kind of concerned with agriculture, right, or with food source essentially, more than they are actually nosing does around. Or what are you seeing there?
Well, I mean, they're instinctual. They're like a dog. If they see a doe, they'll go nose it.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't necessarily mean that doe's in heat, but they'll go nose her,
Mm-hmm.
because their horns are hard and their testosterone's starting to rise. But predominantly, yes, it's still a bed to food, food to bed pattern.
Yeah. So are there any characteristics that you're looking for in a certain buck, like preseason, say, now in the summer scouting, or even in the early season, that leads you to believe that that buck may not be killable early?
Well, we look for daylight walkers, I mean, if every picture you have of a buck is at night, your odds are not very high that you're going to go see him during daylight. The cameras don't lie.
Yeah.
We're looking for one that's giving us daylight hope, and that's the buck we generally target.
Yeah. So are you, say it's a newer property, or are you first, running your trail cameras, say, on a food source and then backing off and I mean, because in my opinion, or not in my opinion, but in my experience, I've seen where we have, say, put camera on a food source and had pictures of a deer at night, but then moved back, several hundred yards, and you're starting to get them in daytime. Is that how you guys are usually approaching a new property when you're hanging trail cameras to find those daylight walkers?
Sure. I have a tendency to put a lot more cameras out on a new property, because you really get better and better at properties every year that you hunt them, and you'll actually see certain bucks do the same things that other bucks did 6, 7, 8, 10 years previous. They get the same patterns and use the same beds, same food sources, same water, etc. So when I get to a new property, I've got to learn as fast as I can everything about that property. So instead of putting a camera out per 100 acres or 150, I might put a camera out at per 50 or per 40, something like that, and try to find where the daylight activity is, and it depends on the size of the food source, or, the hunting pressure on that property previous. The worst thing for deer in terms of daylight activity is human pressure. So if they're experiencing a lot of human pressure, or if there's a lot of cattle, anything that kind of wigs them out, makes them scared, it's going to subdue them into the night.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, what is your, I guess, preferable setup whenever you're trying to find a daylight walker, but you're also hoping that when you go in to check that trail camera to find that information out, that you don't, lay a lot of scent down and scare the deer, or, I guess have him visually see you?
Oh, I will have put it somewhere where he cannot. Basically, I never, ever penetrate a bedding area. Period. And that's just the way I've always hunted. I'm outskirts all the time, and I just won't go in almost ever. During the rut, I will a little bit, but other than that, I just won't go into what I perceive to be a thicket or a bedroom.
So, I guess KC kind of alluded to this earlier, but at least in our area of the country, we don't really have ag right there where we're at. It's mostly, we don't have any kind of a food source of ag. It's more like coastal Bermuda, hay type of stuff for cattle. In an area where, I guess in any area, but also, like an area like this, it's tough for us to find bedding sometimes and understand where the bedding is habitually, and not just one day kind of one-off thing. So how are you pinpointing bedding when you go to hang these trail cameras?
Well, just based on experience, if I look at the place, and typically the thicker the cover, the greater the likelihood that there's a bed there. That, and it just comes from observation. Sometimes the trail camera will tell you part of the story, but it won't tell you everything that you'll learn with your eyes. Sometimes it takes sitting there and scouting that property morning and night, several days, maybe weeks, to figure out where they're coming from and where they're going. And if it's cover that's kind of random throughout the property, sometimes beds are hard to discover. I certainly look for north faces during the early part of the season, or north facing structure. And then as you go in and start to get a little colder, I see a lot of south and east bedding.
Are you seeing where deer on a property will shift their bedding oftentimes throughout the season? I mean, I know there's like summer patterns and more of a winter pattern, but are you seeing, because in some cases I feel like some of the deer we target here, just especially on some of the river bottom country here in East Texas, you kind of see like a deer will show up here for 3 days and then it'll show up there for 3 days. And it's kind of like you feel like that this deer is not bedding in the same place, every night.
Oh, for sure. They won't habitually bed in the exact same place. They'll have a multitude of different beds because they've got a home range that they move around in. But I do see seasonal bedding differences in the terms of the later in the year it gets, when the foliage drops, you can bet they're going to the thickest cover. Also, when the temperatures drop, they're going to go to some sort of thermal cover, in my experience. So earlier in the season, bed is much more difficult to identify. Later in the season, it does get a little easier to identify.
Yeah, I hear you. KC, what are you thinking, man?
Well, I'm kind of wondering, we hear a lot about thermal cover, especially from the northern states. Mark, in your experience, is there such a thing as summertime thermal cover? Are there places that are cooler in the summer? I understand the shade is always cooler, but are there particular bedding areas that you'll see because they are cooler in the summer?
Absolutely. So that's what I was saying. Look for north-facing stuff or river bottoms with some shade, coming in from a bank that, the north face is a little bit nicer, a little bit cooler. So, yeah, positively, there's places where they seek out when it's hot. Yeah.
Cool. So when do you see, is it a specific date or a weather event, temperature or something, but when do you see bucks shift off of that early season pattern and start to show rut activity, like pre-rut stuff, scraping and that sort of thing?
I always see it in and around the middle part of the month, call it the 15th through the 20th. And I always say they go into the lull with one look, and they come out looking like a completely different deer. You call it the November swell, if you will.
Yeah.
Because they've got that skinny summer look where they've been on food, and then all of a sudden they kind of go underground. You can't get any daylight pictures, can't see bucks during daylight with the exception of a really major front. And then all of a sudden they come out, and they look like an NFL linebacker, So that's when, and you should really precede your camera setups prior to getting to the lull over to known scrapes. So I have a tendency to scout a lot in February and March, and I'll mark out either with I'll drop a pin, or I'll actually circle the tree or put a ribbon on it or something like that. If it's a major scrape, I want my camera there before they start hitting it hard in mid-October.
Mm-hmm.
Sure. Is that a scrape that you have engineered yourself, or is that one that you've found?
More often than not, it's one I found.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
Are you doing anything to promote the startup of scrapes, like creating leaking branches or, raking out spots or anything like that?
I don't rake out spots, but I do plant a lot of tree coys or scrape trees in my
Mm-hmm.
fields. I'll just go put a T-post in the ground and then strap a tree to it that's got a good scraping limb. And we have great success with that technique. And if you really want to make it good, put 3 or 4 of them out there so that they see that group of trees and they'll come over and just rip the living tar out of them.
That's cool.
That's awesome.
They break them up every year.
I guess you could put one at 20, one at 25, one at 30, and it would just be like a range.
We put them all at about 20 to 25 actually, and we'll get them and we'll put them to try to incentivize broadside movement. We'll put one to the left, one center, and one right, so that they're walking tree to tree, and we also angle the limb so that they would be broadside to slightly quartering away.
Yeah, that's awesome. So earlier you mentioned the lull, and that's sort of a highly contested subject in the hunting world. And it sounds like that you are for sure a believer in the October lull. Can you explain why you think it happens and kind of what it is?
Well, there's a period in mid-October that they just don't walk during daylight. And I kind of alluded to it in the fact that their attention turns from feed to their testosterone spikes. All right. And they just go underground and they're raking and they're staying pretty close to their bedroom, but they're getting more and more frustrated. And then all of a sudden the testosterone really gets high and they start covering ground looking for those first available does. So I'm 100% a believer in the lull. The thing that will have some people saying, well, there's no lull. I killed a deer October the 16th. Well, what was the weather that day? That day? Was it a cold front? Did that get him up on his feet? Because those cold October winds that we talked about earlier will get them on their feet moving, but it's not nearly as consistent as the movement in early October or late October. It takes a special weather event often to get one going.
Sure. Yeah. So, to you, it sounds like the October lull doesn't mean don't hunt. It's just you adjust your hunting strategy according to that time period, right?
Yeah, you got to hunt smart, right? You can do a lot of damage in the middle part of October. That's been my experience. I stay out. I'm getting sets ready, tweaking some stuff, moving cameras, waiting on a front. When I get a front, I'll hunt it hard, and then I'll back up a little bit and just wait for the good stuff that's coming. That's the way I look at it.
Sure. And is it kind of coincide? Like, does the lull coincide with when bucks will split from their bachelor groups to kind of run into more solo style life? Is that kind of what kicks off the lull?
They will do that, no doubt. It's all part of that, swelling up process and establishing territory and that testosterone rising. There's no doubt. But I don't see them overly batched up early either. Maybe a little bit. But they're already starting to do that once their horns get hard, at least here in the Midwest.
Yeah.
When would you say your peak estrus is down there?
Last year, well, I'll tell you this. I went off of when the fawns dropped this year. I live in I don't live there. I am building a house in a really, I guess you'd call it a suburban area. It's out in the country, but there's a really heavy doe population out there near this lake. And so I can get a real good bearing on what's going on with deer in our general area because the does are so visible all the time. And I saw when most of our fawns dropped and counted back 200 days. I think that's about right. And it would have been that last week in November, somewhere right in there for us whenever the does would have been being bred.
Right. Okay. So it's very similar to, I have a lease just west of Dallas, about maybe 2 hours by Albany in Stockford County. And around there, they all tell me it's about the 24th, 25th of November. So that's
Thanksgiving's a good day.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what you're saying as well. So therefore, your October lull probably happens a little bit later in the month than I would think than what we see up here. At least it does to me down there. Like those bucks stay on a pretty good feed pattern through the month of October. And I actually see them kind of going underground where they're not moving very well, actually on into like the early part of November. Like I don't see that much daylight activity on my cameras down there in early November. Some, but not nearly like I had been seeing in October.
Yes, I would really agree, probably just from our trail camera information. I think last year our first, one of my target bucks, we got him on camera. Tyler, was it the 9th or the 7th?
Leader?
Yes.
Was on the 7th, I believe.
The 7th,
Yep.
And that was really the first rut activity we got. That actually was a really cool trail camera series. We had it set on burst and watched him follow a doe, and it was on one of those cold front mornings, November 7th. I'm pretty sure last year it stayed really warm up until about that time.
Yeah.
And it was one of those really cool damp mornings, and he kind of came right through our shooting lane, and we weren't there. It was pretty awesome and terrible at the same time. But yeah, I think you're exactly right. Before that, we didn't have hardly any daytime moving on trail cameras at all. A few nighttime pictures here and there, and a little bit of scrape hitting, but not much. And then right there, probably around mid-November is when the scrapes really started opening up, and we started seeing quite a few more bucks.
Exactly. So I mentioned that app earlier. The app picks that stuff up as well. You can go in and the app comes preset of a November 14th peak estrus, but you have the ability to change that peak estrus to your area. It will then take the phases and slide them for you and tell you what.
Oh, that's cool.
That's pretty cool. It's a smart app.
Is there any interactive side of it to where people can report or kind of show activity? That way you get a much more regional feel for it or whatever? Or is it kind of got to just be something you adjust on your own?
It would be something that you would adjust on your own. It's something we've talked about, but it's a very expensive proposition from the designer.
I could see that.
I could see it coming. But we would like to show heat maps and everything else in terms of where we all learning together. That's that's the ultimate goal. But in the short term, the app will tell you what you're supposed to know. But in reality, if you're using common sense and looking at what the app's telling you, you can make your own adjustments in all reality. Just all you'd have to do is either go, okay, this app is a touch optimistic for me, or it's a touch pessimistic for me. And then it will remain consistent. I will tell you that because the algorithm's set. So you just have to recognize whether it's a touch optimistic or a touch pessimistic.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. I can't wait for that. So, we're talking October here, and I know that you put an emphasis on that month often. So would you say a person is doing themselves the best amount of justice to focus on trying to get a deer killed pre-lull or post-lull in October?
Pre.
And why?
I mean, it's both. Pre, you can find them. I mean, if he's showing up daylight on your cameras prior to the lull, he's bedding right there. I mean, and they generally don't move a whole heck of a lot. If you can find a daylight walker, they're very killable, in my opinion. The post part of that question, after the lull, then you start to increase your odds because they're moving around a little bit more, but it's much harder to target a specific deer. But you're liable to be sitting there, and all of a sudden a deer you don't even have pictures of walks into your life. I mean, it's that time of the year where home ranges start to expand rapidly.
Sure. So, when can we start using some of those more aggressive strategies like rattling and grunting and stuff like that in October? Is it right after the lull there?
Yeah, right after is better than pre, for sure.
Yeah.
The more I hunt, the less I rattle and call. But I still do, but when I do, I have much greater success now than I ever have because I'm very particular about when I'll do it. If that buck isn't in the exact right mood, almost dead straight upwind of me, I almost won't call to him. And I seldom, if ever, call blind. I will do it down on our Texas lease because it's so vast and I can get myself in a good position for my downwind side. But in the Midwest, I don't call very often. But when I do call, I have great success. So pick your times right to call.
So I kind of had a question on the calling thing. We hear a lot about, and I do quite a bit of it, in certain scenarios with rattling and then grunting. But I'm also an elk hunter. And, a big thing for elk hunting is actually scraping. When you're calling bulls, you go over and just wear out this little spruce tree or an aspen with a stick, right? Is that sound or that action, would that ever work on whitetails that you've seen where they're attracted to that?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. I killed the biggest deer of my life because another deer was doing that.
Really?
Danger a couple years ago. There's a buck that I called Danger's Calling because he was a 3-year-old. He came in and he started ripping the world apart on this one sapling. He's just going crazy on it. And I knew I was in Danger's bedroom because I'd found a bunch of pictures of him going into this little patch, and I told Wade, I said, if he's here, he's coming to that. And it wasn't a minute, 2 minutes, and I could see his legs walking through this thicket.
Oh man, that's pretty exciting.
And then the buck that was doing making all the racket, he looked up and his nose started dripping, and he turned and he ran away. And I told Wade, I said, man, I bet she's coming. And sure enough, there he was. I saw his legs and I saw his antlers, and that was the first time I'd seen him. I'd seen him the previous year, but this year it was the first time I'd seen him, and he walked all the way into 4 or 5 steps and I shot him.
Man, that's awesome. Yes,
it can work, but you got to be wise about doing it. I mean, it takes a lot of motion, and I have a tendency to sit real still when I'm deer hunting.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think that's a really good strategy for people to employ, is the sitting still side of things. I think that works well.
Well, it's surprising how many people can't.
Yeah.
Because I hunt with a lot of different people, and I'm constantly saying, oh, sit still, sit still, sit still. I mean, those deer can see about 20 times better than we can, and it's great to be on your phone and all that stuff. But man, I can't tell you how many times I've been picked because of movement. It's one of the best tips I could give somebody is to just sit still. And by sitting still, I mean, don't move, with the exception of slow movement, head, eyes, that type of stuff. I mean, you'll kill a lot more deer if you're sitting still.
Yeah. I think that's something that I can, learn from. I have a tendency to hang stands really high in the tree so that I can get away with stuff, and it kind of limits some places where I can hang. So, and Tyler's hunted with me the last few seasons, and he sometimes can't believe how much I'm moving the stand, and it's because I feel so comfortable up there. But as the season progresses, you really, as the leaves fall, here we might have leaves till mid-December, but once those leaves fall, you really have to watch that and have to maintain being still, and it gets tough sometimes, especially when you're not seeing a ton. So that's why we're talking to you, so we can see more deer.
It does, but man, I'm telling you, it's one of the best pieces of advice you could ever give a young hunter or a new hunter is just try to be still. Because I'm telling you that there's deer you're spooking that you don't even know you're spooking. They are the masters at staying alive.
Yeah, no kidding. So, I kind of had a question that was a little bit more cultural, and then I was kind of let Tyler take off from there on that. But so why the emphasis on October? Is it strictly about the deer, or does it have to do with hunting pressure and people around you and impending gun seasons and stuff like that?
It's both, but it's more about the deer and just how killable they are. And they get very killable back in December again. Of all the phases, the ones that I like the least are the ones that revolve in and around the rut. They're just so unpredictable, and it goes from expectation to hope. When I go in on any set in October, I expect to see a certain deer, or I think I'm going to see him. When you go in November, you hope to see something, because you just don't know where they're at. I mean, they could be 2 miles from the last picture you had in 6 hours, So it's very challenging to target a particular deer. However, the rut also makes October spots that are bad very good for some people. So it just depends on what dirt you're hunting and where you're at, and what your perspective is to that.
Yeah,
sure. Do you think that that's Mark Drury as a land manager and a guy who really puts an emphasis on knowing his deer and knowing the ins and outs of them? Do you think that is kind of the creation of that, to where the rut isn't your favorite? Can we juxtapose that to maybe a guy who takes 4 or 5 years to draw a tag in Iowa and goes and hunts one of the big public places there, would you say to them that October or December is also the time to be there, or would you say that the rut is actually more preferable for that scenario?
Well, all the above, especially if you waited 4 or 5 years to get a tag. Because
just go live in Iowa for 3 months, right?
Well, literally, yeah, because there's certain periods and certain cold fronts that those bucks are going to move. You know, you can see it in your cameras every year. You go back and you go, wow, they all move this day. They all move that day. They all move this day. But there's not enough of those days throughout the season, you know, and we're lucky because we get to sit there for 4 straight months and we see every time that they move, we see it. And we know why they move that day because of the weather or whatever. So you can't go there. You know, you can go during, you know, November 5th through the 9th is historically the best in Iowa. However, if it's 15 degrees above normal, just throw it out the window. You know, they're not going to do it. Consequently, the peak of the rut can be very challenging up there, the 10th through the 15th of November. But if you get cold weather, it can be awesome. So they're so weather related at any time during the season. It's as much about hitting cold fronts as it is hitting a certain time of the year.
So is that because of the cold weather or the barometer? Like, what do you put over one or the other?
It's a weather-related game. They're slaves to their stomach, and when things get cold, they have a tendency to go to food source earlier in the day, and that's basically the gist of it.
Okay.
When they feel threatened and they've got to live, they'll go feed a little bit earlier than any other day. More often than not, they're going to feed after dark.
Right.
They're going to bed before light. On those cold fronts, that expands that time just a little bit.
Yeah. So you were kind of hinting at this earlier, and I've heard you discuss this before, but can you talk about annual patterns within deer herd?
In terms of like what food source?
Well, no, more like movement patterns and say, you know, a deer. So we had a deer show up, like we said earlier, on November 7th. You know,
are you talking about home ranges switching?
Well, I'm talking about, I've heard you talk about how you can expect a deer to within a couple of days of last year be in a certain area.
Really, that's home range type discussion. So, you know, you're liable to have a buck all summer and then losing and then him not show back up till the following year or possibly December because their home ranges switch. But one thing I have seen is they are historically very patternable. And I often look at last year's pictures, and not often, but I almost always look at last year's pictures to kill this year's deer. I look at this year's pictures, but only if I'm trying to match up what they were doing the previous year. Because more often than not, when you get a picture, you know, of a daylight walker, you think about it, you're late, you know, you're not there. You have to be the camera the day that he's daylight. And I have a decent amount of success looking at last year's pictures and going, all right, he was daylight in and around this area, this range, and then go in there and kill that deer.
So is that like a 3-day window, a 5-day window, or, you know, what does that look like for a guy who may not have time to sit there for 4 months?
You never know. I mean, it might be an hour window. You just never know. Every deer's different. I've seen deer that literally didn't leave 80 acres. And I've seen other deer that ran 3 miles a day. You know, I mean, it's crazy how they differ in their demeanor. And if you look, you could look at a litter of pups and watch them all grow up. They'll all have different personalities. You know, one of them's a runner and the other one's lazy and lays around, doesn't move, you know. And I think deer are very similar to that. Some of them are aggressive and they'll break every horn on their body, you know, and then the next one you see doesn't have a scratch on his coat. Every time's perfect. He comes walking in very meekly. He leaves at the sight of any other mature deer. I mean, it's amazing how they differ. So you gotta kind of interpret what their personality is and hunt accordingly.
Right. So, being a very popular hunter, being a guy who has killed a lot of big deer publicly, have you seen increased hunting pressure surrounding properties that you manage? And are there any special tactics or tricks that you would employ when dealing with nosy neighbors?
Mid-November is like Disney World around my farm.
I can imagine.
You would have to see it to believe it. Everybody talks about, oh, if I hunted there, you know, I could do that. Well, come on up and get you some in the middle part of November when every buck that pops his head out of cover gets shot from the road. I mean, we'll find 7 to 10 headless bucks every year. I mean, the poaching around our farms is just unbelievable. The road pressure and it's like nothing you've ever seen.
It's so sad.
You hear those slow poppers, you know, you're sitting in your stand and you can hear that gravel popping. You know, they're driving 5 mile an hour.
Mm-hmm.
It's the last 30 minutes of light, and then oh, you know, you hear it. It's nonstop.
Yeah. So are you? I mean, I guess are you discussing that with game wardens? I mean, do they know that that's going on, and are they doing anything about it, or how do you
of course,
prevent that?
They tried their hardest, you know, but you know, when a guy's covering 2 counties, how can he, you know, he can't just go walk my farm, you know, he's got calls that are coming in, and it's happening all over in Iowa, man. There's so many big bucks that people come in and they try to kill them.
Yeah.
You know?
Are you ever running trail cameras to try to catch the road hunters like in certain spots?
We have,
yeah,
and we've had success with it, but it's a challenge to do, you know, I mean, because you never know where that deer's going to pop out. You never know where the guy's going to be, and it's tough to do.
Yeah.
But road poaching and then shed poaching in the spring, another epidemic.
Oh, yeah.
It's crazy how many people shed poach.
Man, that's so sad to me. You know, and another thing that's sad is, like you mentioned earlier, people saying, well, if I had that property, you know, and they don't realize what's gone into that property. And, you know, I know you've been doing this a long time, but do you ever have difficulty dealing with haters, or, you know, are there certain slanderous comments that still get to you today, or are you past that?
Not anymore, unless they pertain to Taylor. I mean, she gets more hate than any of us, and that's what really bothers me. It is mind-numbing to me how aggressive men can be to a female hunter. It is the damnedest thing I've ever seen, and it gets me fired up even thinking about it. And it's not just Taylor, it's Kendall, it's all the female hunters. They get so much hate. And they're in a day goes by, somebody doesn't tell Taylor they wishes she was dead. It is absolutely lunacy, the things that she has directed towards her. I'm a big boy. I can take it. I mean, I don't care by and large anymore what people say. I honestly don't, unless there's legitimacy behind it. You know, if there's a concern, I mean, I'm going to address it. But more often than not, it's hate and it's jealousy. But the stuff they say to her is, you couldn't even imagine it.
That's sad for sure.
It's beyond sad. It is sick.
Yeah.
It's sick.
Yeah.
And some of it is hate. Some of it is sexual. Some of it is jealousy. Others are dead. I mean, you'd have to read them to believe it.
Yeah. So, I mean, as hunting media, is there a way to curb that in the future? I mean, how do we address that? How do we talk about that?
Find them and kill them. Everybody's a keyboard warrior,
right?
Know, and you know, a lot of them are behind aliases. You don't even know who they are,
mm-hmm.
You know. But if it's somebody we know who they are, we try to turn them in. But it's tough to defend. You know, it's about like that road poaching, and it's indefensible. So that's why it's happening.
Right. So on the other end of the spectrum, who would you say is your hunting hero and why?
Well, for sure, Terry. You know, I mean, I've watched him my entire life. But I would say collectively, if you asked us both that question, we would look outside and, you know, the people that I learned from or that I idolized growing up, Roger Rothar, Barry and Gene Winsel. Learned a lot from guys like Dan Perez, David Westmoreland. They were killing giant deer back when I first started. And 2 of the best deer hunters I know here in the Midwest. I don't know if you know them or not. But I read everything that Gene Winsel wrote. I watched every video that the Winsel brothers did. And I also read every word that Roger Rothar wrote. And those guys were way ahead of their time.
Yeah.
Way ahead of their time.
So you're a big reader?
I was then. I'm not anymore.
Okay. Too much trail camera information to study, right?
No doubt. Yeah, we have a lot. So that's your reading, really, in reality. You're looking at the picture and looking at all the dates and times and trying to put a pattern to it.
Yeah.
It's I have 80 cameras, but this year it'll be right at 90, 92,
wow.
94. And I'll look at 1.5 million to 2 million pictures a year.
Oh my
My
gosh.
gracious.
I don't see how there's time in the day for it.
It's time in the night, honestly.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because we hunt all day, so I'll
Mm-hmm.
lay there and I can't tell you how many times I've been laying flat on my back and my computer has come back and smacked me straight in the face because I fell asleep looking at a card.
Yeah.
And it happens all the time.
Yeah, it's like that college studying, cliche clip where you see somebody fall asleep with a book on their face,
Yeah, well, those computers hurt.
They're probably not nearly as comfortable as a book hitting you. So what's coming up for Drury Team throughout the end of the year here?
Well, I mean, we just launched our new show, Critical Mass. 13 is in its 5th season. Bo Mattis, I think, is in its 10th or 11th season. They're all out there, and we've had one airing thus far. The second airing will be next week, and then it's into our annual meeting, and then we kick off the fall. This year, I'm going to Utah for a mule deer hunt with I guess it'd be my soon-to-be son-in-law, because Taylor's engaged to get married in March of next year, but I'm going to go hunting with Austin. He's a guide out there in Utah. So
Awesome. I was just there actually in Utah. We were east of the Salt Lake area. I don't know if that's anywhere close to where you're going to be, but
I'll just be north of it a little bit, maybe an hour and a half, up at the Wild Country Adventures. A very beautiful place, 250,000 acres, and my future son-in-law actually guides there.
Cool, man. That's awesome. I'll tell you this. I've spent pretty much this entire year up until this point trying to line up an interview with you, and I think it proves that you're a busy man, not to mention the fact that you're falling asleep with a computer hitting you in the face every once in a while. I have to say thank you so much for your time, and I appreciate this. I know also tell Matt thanks, and we'll tell him as well, but he spent a lot of time surfing through our email chain trying to make sure that we can line this up. So thanks for your time, man. We really appreciate it, Mark.
Absolutely, man. You ought to interview Terry sometime and
Sure.
get his perspective. Or Taylor always gives a good interview. You ought to get her on there sometime.
That would be great. I would actually love to talk to her about what we were talking about earlier with the hate and stuff, and see how she deals with that, and maybe if she has an answer to how we kind of tame that mess here in the future. So
and she actually kind of ignores it. She's seen so much of it. It bothers me more than it bothers her.
Mm-hmm.
But she always talks about, it bothers her to think that a young hunter that's 10, 11, 12 would read some of that and dissuade that young lady from hunting.
Right. Yeah. Man.
And I agree with that.
It's
like,
that's sticky right there. That's a tough situation to.
It is a tough situation, and hunters are so, not all of them, but some of them can be pretty, I don't know how you say it, with some of the hate you see on social media, it blows my mind.
It's very brash,
They can be very brash, very petty, very jealous, very selfish. Man, we need to be propping each other up. And
I agree.
We need to be introducing others to the sport. I mean, that is, our numbers are shrinking, and we've got to get stronger as a community.
Yeah, man, that's the greatest plug we could have right there to wrap this thing up. And I'm telling you, I'm with you on that. And if there's anything we can ever do, I know our platform is much smaller than yours, but we definitely would promote that same message, and that's what we're hoping to do. We need more hunters out there, and I know it kind of goes against the whole trying to keep my buck a secret kind of thing, but and to have lots of opportunity and stuff. But man, it's we're not going to have any opportunity if we keep dwindling our numbers and have no influence in this nation anymore. So
absolutely.
Anyway, I appreciate it again, and I hope to talk to you again soon, maybe in the next year or so.
Yes, sir. You've got my cell number. Just send me a text.
Yes, sir. All right. Well, have a good season, and we wish you the best of luck.
Hey, thank you, guys. I appreciate you having me on.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Thanks, Mark.
Take care, guys.
All right. Man, I feel a lot better about hunting this October after talking to him.
Let's go.
I know. It gets me pumped up.
We really could actually hunt in the morning if you wanted to.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Why
But
is
it's
it?
going to be hot. So I don't know. I don't know. It's we got this thing where we got keyed in on hunting mornings in October common knowledge tells you not to, but really it's just all about, kind of what Mark was saying, like, just pay attention to those weather fronts and have your most recent information ready to go and, just kind of make a choice from there.
Right, yeah, for sure. And unfortunately, we didn't have really any cameras going in October last year, so to speak, so that kind of ruins like our historical data. But we do have some data, some most recent data, that's pretty good. I feel like that we could use the weather patterns for. And, Mark knows what he's talking about. Like, if you want to see the proof, go down and look at the link in the bottom here, and the dude kills a absolute giant in the month of October, Bucktober, man. So go check that out. And there's also a link to one of our most recent videos. It's a PLC that we did right before hunting season, where we saw Septober. Or however you want to say it, buck timber. Sorry, buck timber is how it be. He was a very big buck that we saw like 2 days before the season started, and we went in after him the first day, and it didn't quite work for us, but we got some good things working right now.
Yeah.
For sure.
So I don't know if we've talked about this on the podcast yet, but we think that buck is the buck that I passed last year.
Yeah.
We call him Baby Body.
Yeah,
but he's got big old horns on him.
We'll definitely talk more about that in the live podcast, especially if somebody wants to ask the question. Not the live podcast, but the live event that we're doing on Facebook, which is essentially us podcasting with all of our friends on Facebook. But yeah, we'll definitely visit that, I'm sure. It's kind of exciting, like people.
Is that Face-tober? Is that what?
Yeah, it's actually Face-tober timber. It's in the timber with tober. Anyway, I'm really excited about that because it's just a unique opportunity that we don't normally get the opportunity to do very often. Because, if you're not working late, I'm at a soccer game or whatever, shuffling kids around. It's just we have busy lives, man. We don't, we're not doing this full time.
I'm hoping that trunk or treat at church does not fall on the biggest cold front that we've seen in our lifetimes, like it did last year. Yeah. That was a series of unfortunate events.
I had a place that I was keeping an eye on public, that we had not like a big buck really, but like a buck that I would have shot, 3-year-old, 8-point, short G3s, whatever. But I would have shot him, and on that cold front that morning, he showed up at 10:30, like a.m., just middle of the wide open day, just looking around, So I don't know. The first cold front I get a chance to hunt, I'm gonna be all over it this year. So I'm just waiting on it. It happened right before the season, actually. So
yeah, for
we
real.
didn't get a chance.
Yeah, but we drove around that day, and there were deer going everywhere all day long.
That was fun.
Yeah.
If you haven't listened to the Big Buck Breakdown that we just did with Eric Barber, you probably, if you have been listening, you probably remember him from some of the previous podcasts. We've done a Big Buck Breakdown with Eric already from last year. So the dude's he's a cold killer. And we actually got a lot of good information out of him. I think it was episode 18, but I can't quite remember if that's it for sure. But we talked about hunting bucks in the big timber. I think it's called Timber Tactics. Check that out. Eric's one of my favorite guys that we've got the chance to hang out with. Nice dude. And, he's just one of those dudes that's young but knows what he's doing, just always on deer. So we did a Big Buck Breakdown with him a couple days ago, and go check that out. He has a really cool story. Anything else?
That's all I know, man. Be ready for the night.
Yeah.
I'm pumped.
Me too, man. Go ahead. If you want to send questions in, go ahead and do it, or you can just comment the day of.
Yeah.
But feel free to send us messages on Facebook, Instagram, email, through our website, whatever. So anyway, man, I hope your guys' seasons are going well. I hope everything is panning out for you. And just remember, this is your element.
Live in it.
Hey everybody, listen up. I got mega huge news. Meat Eater Live is heading back out on the road. That's right. Join me and the crew. Clay Newcomb, Cal, Yanni, Spencer's going to be there. Phil the engineer's going to be there. Meat Eater Live, headed back out. Now, when you get every ticket, okay, every ticket you buy, you get a signed copy of our new Meat Eater Outdoor Cookbook. This tour is celebrating the release of the book. Buy a ticket, get a signed copy, Meat Eater Outdoor Cookbook, wild game recipes for the grill, smoker, camp stove, and campfire, which I'll point out is a $38 value. Here's where we're going to go. April 23rd, the Mesa Arts Center in Mesa, Arizona. April 24, the Balboa Theater in San Diego. April 25, the Grove in Anaheim, California. April 27, the Crest Theater in Sacramento. April 29, the Union in Salt Lake City. April 30, the Egyptian in Boise. May 1, the Wilma Theater in Missoula. May 2, the Bing Crosby Theater in Spokane, Washington. May 4, Revolution Hall in Portland, Oregon. And May 5, the last day of the tour, Pantages Theater in Tacoma, Washington. For tickets and more information, visit the events page at themeateater.com. Hope to see you at the show.